Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that over on the Ken LaSalle YouTube channel, things are really starting to bust out all over. We've got reading videos and me talking to you videos and all kinds of stuff. Head on over to YouTube and check it out. Alan Oswald Watts, self-righteous Fatass in the morning over on WGNO every morning, found his conscience the other day. It was only about the size of a stick of gum, hidden behind one refrigerator and half a dozen boxes of the National Review. Alan Oswald Watts wasn't looking for it. As it so happened, he was looking for articles about Obama pushing socialism among black activists who only want to wipe out the white race when he came across it. And he didn't know what to do. He did what any normal person would do when they found a small frightened creature about the size of a cockroach and just as inviting looking behind their refrigerator. He put it in a shoebox. He threw it, actually, into the box that recently held his Trump 2020 USA flag presidential fashion sneakers. The ones with the glitter and the Chinese flag. He had no serious plans to wear them in public, but they were great for wearing around the apartment, a place where he made extra sure not to be seen in public since all of his contemporaries lived in mansions and yachts. Alan Oswald Watts wasn't embarrassed. Embarrassment, shame, empathy, and other weak human emotions had been beaten out of him at the last CPAC by none other than Mike Pence's Dom himself. But it would not do for him to be seen by anyone, especially now that Glenda, his next-door neighbor, was coughing. Actually, she was coughing quite a bit. Glenda was nearly 80 years old. Her ex-husband had been on the board at Monsanto, for crying out loud. But Alan Oswald Watts, self-righteous fat-ass that he was, had done not one, not two, but about a dozen shows in which he had told people explicitly not only not to stay home, but to visit anything that was still open, touch their neighbors, lick the produce at the Quickie Mart, and disobey any stay-at-home order the way any patriot would disobey any lie, any falsehood, any orange president, any lie. And those shows had done so well, and Alan Oswald Watts felt so full of confidence, righteousness, and himself after they were broadcast that, sure, he told some friends that COVID-19 was nothing more than a hoax perpetrated by the Democrats who own all the streaming services that were sure to make a killing with everybody home. And sure, he told the guy at the gas station that COVID-19 was a plot by Democrats to halt the sale of American oil while everyone stayed home. And he may have said something to Glenda. Something about the pandemic being a lie. Something about how she should go out and be amongst people as much as she could just to show the Democrats a thing or two. Something about how you couldn't really get that sick. Certainly no sicker than the common cold. And the walls in their building were actually much thinner than Alan Oswald Watts had been led to believe. As it turned out, old Glenda was really just a very calm, quiet person. Until she started coughing. Day and night. And Alan Oswald Watts couldn't get a minute of sleep. And he was on the radio, talking on the radio with some dumbass Democrat who was talking some nonsense about testing, as if anyone in America wanted to take a test. And then some libtard was spewing about how poor people needed a roof over their heads and starving babies needed food. And self-righteous Fatass in the morning shouted back,
I've had enough of you and enough of your libtard causes that don't impact anyone's life. I'm not getting any sleep at night because my old neighbor can't. This old woman, she just keeps coughing and coughing and...
And Alan Oswald Watts realized what he was saying. Over the air, to millions of Americans, potentially. And fortunately, he caught himself in time to turn it into the most creative segue about buying gold that any of his audience had ever heard. Alan Oswald Watts told himself that he'd have a long talk with Glenda, set her down, talk. Tell her about the dangers of pneumonia. Pneumonia's a dangerous thing. Thousands of people die of it every year. Why, Glenda herself could be suffering from pneumonia, and a lot of knee-jerk reactionary liberals would call it Corona Light Virus or COVID-19 because they're so youth-focused. That's what the liberals are, youth-focused. That's why they elected Obama. It wasn't... And Trump's better than him. We all know that. So why not check into a hospital and tell them she was afraid she was suffering from pneumonia so Alan Oswald Watts could get a little sleep? Huh? Only Glenda wasn't alone when Alan Oswald Watts knocked on her door. And he couldn't stand 6 feet away as Glenda introduced him to her niece, Shade or Shates or something, who had just driven in from Florida. Shade, is it Shade? Was on a cross-country kind of thing, finding herself sort of jaunt, which she had departed on back in January, long before all that Nazi stay-at-home Jawohl garbage, right? And Alan Oswald Watts had to hug Shade. I think I'm saying it wrong. Is it seriously like a window shade? Is it? Okay, Alan Oswald Watts hugged the window shade, and he hugged Glenda, and he heard her blasting the most wretched coughs all night long, and you're not going to believe this. Why should you? Why should you believe the worst? Shade. This person named Shade invited in 2 friends she had met the night before to stay at Glenda's place. After all, they didn't have a place, and I mean, what a drag, right? Alan Oswald Watts knew nothing about Glenda's capacity being so far beyond full when he knocked on her door the next morning to remind her that she wanted to get to the hospital early. Really early. They fill up, you know. And he wanted to remind her to tell the doctor that she had pneumonia. Pneumonia. Like a brand new bottle of ammonia, but not new ammonia. Right? And of course, everyone embraced. After all, why not? Why shouldn't they, right? COVID-19 is a hoax. A hoaxity, hoax. Nobody can catch that which does not exist, and that which does not exist cannot be caught. Therefore, and Alan Oswald Watts had to deliver the most amazing explosion of nonsense since the Big Bang. He called upon his words to be dancers, and directed them to dance out the tale of an amazing island standing in the middle of America, but on the East Coast. And that island, Alan Oswald Watts called Washington. Washington was an island from the mainland of America, but also unto itself, for it was never fully capable of finding its balance. When in balance, Washington purred like a dream composed of low tax rates for the top 1% to 2%, marriage equality for all couples that included 1 man and 1 woman, preferably white, no immigrants from or to any country, nothing different from the way it was in the dream world in which they grew up, nothing ever changing, my way, nah. But Washington wasn't in balance because of the Democrats, who were unbalanced. They wanted people to have health care and the right to vote in a democracy. And they're not even white, most of them. And of course, for these reasons, because everyone accepts them to be true, this is why Donald Trump is right. He's always right. He's never wrong. He can't be wrong. He can only be right. So you're wrong, okay? You're wrong. You're wrong. And Alan Oswald Watts crawled back into his apartment. He knew that it didn't matter that he didn't feel sick at that moment. Odds were pretty good that Glenda didn't have pneumonia. After all, she'd been French kissing all the bikers at that COVID-19 is a hoax, HOXE rally. The ones that had all been rushed to emergency. Alan Oswald Watts saw a strange similarity between COVID-19 and AIDS, which Alan Oswald Watts found as ironic only because of all the really terrible, truly reprehensible things he had said about gay people and trans folk and Mexicans. Everybody, just everybody. And in a way, Alan Oswald Watts had kissed all those bikers too, which was not a redeeming thought. But he woke up the next morning and he went to work just as he always did. And he defended the Republican machine just as he always did. He was a good soldier, just as he had always been. Until a few days ago, when he was screaming on the radio to a caller who insisted hospital workers, or whatever they were called, needed masks or gloves or bonnets or aprons or some kind of shit, and Alan Oswald Watts screamed, and it felt like a fist jumped out of his chest, and his chest burned. And I gotta tell you, that hit him pretty hard. You see, Alan Oswald Watts never really was anybody. But you know what? He was trying. And he sucked up, and he groveled, and he did what he had to do to keep his income flowing and have dinner with all the right kinds of people. And the next day, Alan Oswald Watts told the folks over at WGNO to play a tape. And the day after that, Alan Oswald Watts told the folks over at WGNO to play a tape. And Sherry came by his building. It was just the other night. She had all of his stuff in a box. She dropped it off outside of his building. She told him she really was sorry about him losing his job. And Alan Oswald Watts knew nothing about him losing any. Alan Oswald Watts had never been fired in his life. He quit better jobs than this one, but he couldn't say any of that to her because his throat felt like busted glass. And his head burned like a burner that had been left on all night. His guts were upside down, and this time he didn't have any answers. He couldn't shout his way out of this. And they sent the girl who does the coffee? They sent her out to bring him his stuff? This was Alan Oswald Watts. Who do you think Enraged, Alan Oswald Watts couldn't sleep. He burned with fever for another day and found himself collapsed on the kitchen floor. A box of National Reviews seemingly exploded around him. open to this article or that. Why was he behind his refrigerator? He held a notepad filled with the most insane ideas of Barack Obama pushing socialism among black activists who only want to wipe out the white race in order to colonize. You know what? That's not important. Because that's when Oswald Watts saw it. He thought his conscience would be bigger somehow. And it leapt into his view for the briefest moment as tears sprang out of Oswald Watts' fever-scorched eyes. All he had ever wanted was love. Washington, D.C. has its hands in all of our homes. Welcome to D.C. Home. Until next time, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and let's make this world a better place. This is Ken LaSalle, and I just wanted to thank you for stopping by for this episode of DC Home. For more information about myself and the work I do, I invite you to take a look at my website at kenlasalle.com. You can also find me on Amazon, Audible, iTunes, and anywhere you find ebooks, paperback books, and audiobooks online. That's also where you'd find DC Home Season 1, available in ebook and in audio. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching my name, Ken LaSalle. And thank you, as always, for your support.